know, many of you have been bugging us for a tier list since we did our Rage Gaming video, and we haven't really gotten to it because we felt there were more interesting topics to talk about. But seeing how many requests we've gotten since our last 2 videos that covered tier lists, and after losing our faith in humanity with the Gorgonites we found in Seamless Co-op, I believe it's due time we give our real 2 cents on the matter so people can finally put that rivers of blood away and invest in less repulsive equipment. First of all, we are going to put on the list the 10 best weapons in the game for invasions and duels. We're not going to rank all the weapons in the game because that's completely pointless. Like, seriously, some weapons are literally the same thing, but a tiny bit different, like the Knight's Great Sword and the Banished Knight Great Sword. The only difference between these two is just a little bit of damage and range. All the weapons in the list will be judged individually, with only one exception, which is going to be analysed as a set. We're going to take into account the weapon's moveset, the weapon's damage capability, and its versatility in different combat situations for a player of higher than average skill. The idea is that the weapons are compared when players of similar or equal skill level fight each other with these weapons, as judging it for different levels of skill won't make much sense. Think of it this way. If you, using a D tier weapon, had to fight yourself using an A tier weapon, the version of you using the A tier weapon would most likely win. In this case, the tiers we're going to work with are A tier, S tier, double S tier, and triple S tier, because all the weapons are great. Having explained this, and without further ado, let's jump right into the damn thing.
The first one in the list is the exception that the blue smurf mentioned before, the fingerprint stone shield, also known as the shield named Finger. Finger is a little bit lacking if you use it by itself, as it is very slow, telegraphed, and lacks any respectable range. However, if you use it as a shield though, it becomes much more interesting.
Duh.
With the second highest guard boost in the game, Finger can be very good for passive-type turtling playstyles, if used correctly. Weapons like thrusting swords and heavy thrusting swords can be used for shield poking at the correct moments to basically negate many playstyles, and guard counter builds using daggers like the Cincadea can be quite effective in low latency against slower weapons. Its advantage over the Verdigris shield, which has the highest guard boost, is that it can be infused with different ashes of war for more versatility on top of its madness buildup. Hell, if you infuse it with bleed, it will have both bleed and madness, on top of an arcane scaling that will increase the buildups of said status effects. Finger performs quite well in duels, despite being countered by Starfists with the Hammer Talisman. But it's not so great in invasions. A turtling playstyle simply cannot function too well in a scenario with multiple enemies, even if said enemies lack brain activity. And the fact that shield poking severely penalizes your stamina, getting guard broken when fighting a gank is pretty much guaranteed. It's a bit hard to master. The damage output of the playstyle is good, but not great. And the only scenario where it shines greatly is in duels. Despite that, it's the best of its class and a very solid setup for dueling. For invasions, it would be A tier. And for duels, it would be double S tier. On to the next one. The Banished Knight Halberd is, by far, the best halberd in Elden Ring. It possesses the good halberd moveset, the one with where it pokes your pee-pee instead of bonking your head. Amazing damage with strength builds, and it's the 5th longest halberd in the game. The reason it stands over Commander's Standard, which is basically BKH but longer and stronger, is because it can be infused with Ashes of War. Commander's Standard basically has no combat Ash of War, and this can be very detrimental when considering that ashes like Flaming Strike have amazing synergy with the weapon class. The running light attack is so amazingly strong that it can easily be considered the best running attack in the game, as it synergizes perfectly with 3 of the best talismans in the game, and it's great for chase downs and finishing up opponents on both low and high latency. The weapon also offers hyper armor on 2-handed attacks, which is great to fight silly mashers in both invasions and duels.
How could I lose? I mashed as hard as I could.
The weapon plays exactly the same on both combat scenarios, obviously having bigger trouble against multiple targets. It's relatively simple to use, and dealing big damage with a few good running attacks is simpler than it looks. The downsides would be that it's a somewhat slow weapon that can be easily strafed by good players, reason why it performs best when paired with a hand axe. Taking all of this into account, the Banished Knight Halberd ends up in A tier for both duels and invasions. Solid, but not the best of the bunch. The favorite of many from soft fans out there, Nuts from Burke's sword is one of the best weapons in the game for both duels and invasions. And despite what some uninformed goobers may think, it's not because of Lion's Claw.
Dude, what the fuck?
Being one of the longest colossal swords in the game and boasting absolutely bonkers damage when infused with strength, Nuts' sword is a fantastic tool for trading into nearly anything and come out on top thanks to its absurdly high hyper armor and poise damage values. Its wide-range light attacks cover a huge 180 degrees range in front of you, making it easy to hit multiple people in invasions, while the crouch poke attack is super good for high damage trades and roll-catching panicky goobers. It benefits from both the two-handed sword talisman and the spear talisman, increasing damage numbers even further on crouch pokes, and can use Waves of Darkness, which is probably the best Ash of War in the game for invasions. The weapon's only downside lies in the fact that it's very slow to attack, so good players will dodge most hits on reaction. This also makes it not so great in scenarios when you have to finish up your opponent, as they can easily outrun you. Regardless, it's a very easy-to-use weapon, pretty solid in both invasions and duels. Solid A tier for both categories.
This weapon has the sexiest curves you'll ever see, but don't let its beauty fool you. It will absolutely turn you into its bitch if you let it.
Oh my god, bro.
The Shamshir is different from the rest of the curved swords in Elden Ring, as it has a very unique moveset with awesome forward momentum and broad swings. These swings are incredibly fast, so fast that some people may eat 2 hits in a row before being able to roll away. All of the Shamshir's attacks are great for spacing and chasing people, becoming only stronger with the correct setup. The two-handed sword talisman, of course, and the rotten-winged sword insignia for its consecutive attacks. Not only is it capable of quick, insane damage, but it's also a roll-catching machine thanks to its perfect moveset. The weapon just feels so smooth to use that you'll find yourself very comfortable in most combat scenarios. Sadly, even though it doesn't have any glaring weaknesses, it's a bit lower on the list, only because the weapons that follow it are simply better at everything the Shamshir does. For invasions, it's a solid A tier, and for duels, it can be regarded as S tier. This weapon needs no introduction, as we have thoroughly discussed its cancerous nature in our previous video. But in case you missed it, Rakshasa's Great Katana is the only great katana in Elden Ring that possesses hyper armor, boasting also a special heavy attack moveset different to that of other great katanas. All of its attacks have incredible range and speed. It's very good for trading. It's very good for roll catching. And landing a few hits on anyone will most likely guarantee a kill. It can keep priority against most builds due to having high stun on all of its attacks. It can tank up to colossal swords with its unique Ash of War, and the weapon's supposed defense debuff hardly makes up for how strong the weapon is thanks to its innate hyper armor, damage potential, and bleed buildup. However, despite being insanely good and easy to use, Rakshasa's Great Katana gets heavily countered by great shields such as Fingerprint. If that's not on the menu, then yes. This weapon is very good for both duels and invasions, being a solid S tier in both categories.
Another shield enters the list of the best weapons in Elden Ring, although this one is used as a weapon rather than a blocking tool. The Carrion Thrusting Shield could easily be the best dueling weapon in Elden Ring, if not for a tiny little thing that we'll discuss further into the video. This weapon is a thrusting shield.
No shit!
A new category added in the DLC. And if you recall our last video talking about them, you may remember that they were absolutely fucking broken before the patch. Now both thrusting shields are a shadow of their former selves, but the Carrion Thrusting Shield is still a monster, boasting slightly higher guard boost than the dueling shield. The Carrion Thrusting Shield can both block and defend at the same time, with a slight stamina penalty each time a hit is blocked while attacking. It may seem like a very big con, but when managed properly, the weapon is absolutely asinine to deal with. No weapon in the game can even come close to challenging the ridiculous defensive and offensive capabilities of the Carrion Thrusting Shield. Not only does it have this annoying quirk, but also can deal vomitive levels of damage when combined with the two-handed sword talisman and the spear talisman. Furthermore, its guarding capabilities can be increased with the Great Shield talisman, making the battle even more obnoxious for your opponent. In Invasions, though, it is not a bad weapon per se, but it definitely doesn't shine as bright. The fact that you can be attacked from multiple angles at the same time severely reduces your defensive capabilities, plus multiple blocks while attacking will most likely result in a guard break. Despite that, it's still piss easy to use and can deal with most weapons in the game with ease. For duels, this is the second best weapon in the game, earning a triple S tier. For Invasions, it's another S tier weapon. You most likely love this weapon already because it means foot in Spanish, and we all know that as a FromSoft fan, you just love that shit. Pata was introduced in the shadow of the ERDTREE DLC and already got its dedicated video showcasing how busted it is. In case you didn't know, Pata is a fist-type weapon. Usually, fist-type weapons have this much range. On the other hand, Pata has this much range. I think you're starting to see the point, right? Not only this weapon has the speed of fists and the range of some fucking spears, making it possibly the best chasing weapon in the game, it also has the capability of dealing a buttload of damage thanks to its bugged DLC damage parameters. To add insult to injury, the running heavy attack can combo into a standing heavy attack, a feature that was previously patched on the rest of the fist weapons in the game. It is so easy to use and so damn oppressive that for some gamers this weapon is borderline cheating. It has a similar performance in both duels and invasions, as it can deal with both experienced and new players all together with the same ease. A solid S tier in both categories. The Toothpick of Doom has kept its status as one of the most cowabunga weapons in the game since launch, and it's still to this day incredibly asinine to deal with. Clean Rot Nightsword is the longest and most damaging thrusting sword in the game, a weapon category infamous for its quick piercing attacks and high synergy with most damage-enhancing tools in the game. The weapon is so goddamn fast that it can maul even the sanest and most calm of players into a hairless mess. If used in conjunction with Bloodhound Step, we're looking at the fastest attack in the game with the lowest recovery, meaning that this weapon can completely bully slow weapons and can match faster weapons with the same ease. It's also ridiculously easy to use, as most times simply mashing R1 or fishing for crouch pokes with Bloodhound Step is enough to get the job done, as that's all that's needed. Including the rest of its arsenal only further increases the skill ceiling and capabilities of the weapon, making it a fearsome tumor in most combat scenarios. For invasions, the weapon is the best of the S tier ones, and for duels it's in double S tier, up there with the finger shield.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. The balls are insane! Starfist is a fist-type weapon with the unique property of being able to beat the living shit out of anyone if used properly. What lacks in range makes up for more than enough, with its insanely strong damage potential. The heavy attack of the Starfist can deal bollocks amounts of damage to people with heavy armor, let alone gamers that are not fully optimized on its defenses, and will always stun gamers, regardless of how much poise they have. Hyper armor weapons can be dealt with using Endure and Trading to your heart's content as you watch their health bars melt into a yellow fucky mess. They do require some spacing and critical thinking when using them, as simply mashing like a dummy won't get you the win sometimes, but with a little bit of practice, you will start to see how strong they are. They can even counter shield users easily, because they can deal very good stamina damage, allowing for easy guard breaks. They're pretty good for chases, as well as both running attacks have very good forward momentum, speed and damage. And eventually, the bleed build-up may proc and cause some serious injuries. They are a fantastic weapon in both categories, earning a well-deserved place in double S tier for invasions and triple S tier for duels. Did you ever as a kid grab 2 sticks with a reverse grip and pretend to be a badass ninja or something?
Nope.
Well, you can now relive that experience in the game with the backhand blades. This is currently the most broken weapon for PvP in the game for many reasons. Its overall moveset is insanely fast, with huge forward momentum on most attacks. The crouch attack has the same quick attack animation as daggers, but with the damage of fucking great spears. The running heavy attack hits 4 times and is capable of completely obliterating people with the right setup. It has infinite chase potential thanks to its unique and weird running light attack, and it can beat the Carrion thrusting shield with the backhand blade's exclusive Ash of War called Blind Spot, as it can both dodge its attacks and bypass its defensive capabilities. They require quite a bit of practice to master, but once you learn how to tighten that reverse grip on those 2 long and girthy handles, it is pretty much Jover for most weapon categories. By far the best weapon in Elden Ring, being double S tier for invasions and triple S tier for duels. And with that, the list is complete. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Remember that these weapons were judged when used by someone with higher than average skill at the game, as some of these weapons may be difficult to use for a gamer that doesn't really know what they're doing, which is ironically 90% of the player base. It makes no sense to judge something based on the performance of a player that can't use the weapon to its full potential. So if you're going to discuss the list, please try to do it within the established criteria. It doesn't matter if your little cousin wins every duel against their little friends by using flails. It is not relevant to the conversation.
But you know what's really relevant to the conversation? Mystery thingy. That was a long video. Time to relax a bit, little Zweihander. The mystery thingy of our last video was the how do you pronounce this? Oh yeah, Smithscript Circ. Big congrats to the little porcelain cups who answered correctly. Here's the new mystery thingy of today, and you can try to guess it in the comments below. Remember to stay hydrated, and we'll see you next time. Bye!